Hey everybody, Derek back again. I'm here to bring you another video for our Sons of Anarchy review for the final season coming up on September 9th. And I just did the first 4 episode reviews, and I'm now going to do 2 more. I've decided to do Giving Back, which was episode 5, and AK-51, which was episode 6 of season 1, together. Part of the reason is because, again, like some of the plot lines are just like one episode kind of things, and I don't want to do like 75 videos for every episode of Sons of Anarchy. Some deserve to have their own, and I will do some of them on their own because they need to be on their own. But I feel like these two can be combined, so I'm going to do the reviews on those. So again, if for some reason you are not caught up with Sons of Anarchy, or if you're just starting it, please be aware that there are going to be spoilers. So please do not watch the video if you're not caught up yet. Okay. So in Giving Back, which was the 5th episode, definitely a very big episode for Opie. Because what happens is this is an episode where Gemma basically holds a fundraiser, which is kind of like a charming kind of, community thing where they basically raise money for the local school, bunch of other nice events going on in Charming. And during this time, the club members are required by Gemma, or she's gonna kick their butts to come and help out. So basically, Bobby dons his Elvis impersonation again, and some of the people help out with some of the rides. And in this episode, they're presented with a dilemma. April Hobart, who is one of the members of the club's old lady, she basically asks Gemma if she can have her ex-husband Kyle Hobart come and watch his son play in the band that's going to play at the end of the thing. And Gemma says that they need to put it up to the club. But what happens is that Kyle was actually the person that was supposed to pick Opie up after Opie blew up whatever it was that he needed to blow up for the club. He heard sirens, panicked, and left, and as a result, he was excommunicated from the club because he left Opie behind. He betrayed the Brotherhood. So basically, because of that, Kyle's on the outs. And, bringing him back and seeing Opie, have that negative reaction might not be a good thing, but Opie decides to let Kyle come anyways because he thinks that if he sees him miserable, Opie will appreciate that he still has the club and he still has his family. Well, Kyle shows up and he has, a new girlfriend that's very young, and his children seem to still know him, and it definitely hurts Opie. Opie realizing that his family is in turmoil, they haven't made a lot of money. Opie's trying to be a part of the club and be there for his family. So there's definitely a balance problem, with Opie right now. And when he sees Kyle, he pretty much freaks out, for a little bit. And, his children are, still trying to get used to their father being around. Opie and Kyle do end up hashing it out. They do have a little bit of a fight in the gymnasium. They seem to kind of sort things out. And Kyle basically comes to Jax and says, hey, I got some, auto theft kind of, business going. I can sell you guys like parts for your auto shop, He wants to basically try to buy his way back into the club, which is kind of almost impossible. But, the club thinks they'll mull it over. But when, Kyle was with his, new girlfriend, Jax and Opie happen to see his, shirt go up, and they see that he still has his Sons of Anarchy tattoo on his back, which Jax and Opie both have the same tattoo. And one of the things that the club requires of members that are excommunicated from the club is that they have to black out their tattoo. Like, they're not allowed to wear any Sons of Anarchy tattoos, memorabilia, none of that. And Kyle was required to do that, and he fails to do so. So definitely one of the goriest scenes near the end of the episode is when Tig and the other members burn the tattoo off of Kyle's back, maybe killing him. We don't really know if Kyle lived or not. He gets dropped off in an ambulance, at the hospital. But basically, this was about, retribution. This was, hey, you're supposed to do these things. And it basically, is a wake-up call for other members, to always remember to respect the Brotherhood, because this could happen to you. I mean, it's definitely an awkward scene. They trap him in the garage, they pull his shirt off, and he claims he tried to cover up. They give him the option of fire or knife, which neither sound very appetizing whatsoever. And basically, I'm assuming he chose fire because he assumed he was going to pass out. He does midway through. Either he passes out or he dies. I don't really know. But it definitely was a very, very pivotal episode for the series. Definitely had one of the most shocking scenes that has ever been portrayed on Sons of Anarchy, not including deaths. I mean, this was just sheer brutality that happened to Kyle. Definitely a very, memorable moment for the show. In addition, what we also have going on is the club inside, like some of the members in Stockton Prison, being led by Big Otto Delaney, who was a former member. Well, he is still a member of the club. He's just in prison. Who is played by our very own Kurt Sutter, who created and directed many of the episodes of the series. And basically, they protected this guy named Chuck, who he hid money away from the Chinese. He basically used to launder money for the Chinese triads led by Henry Lin. So he ends up, taking some of their money. He rats on some people and he gets in prison. And the deal was that if the Sons of Anarchy members in prison protected him, he would give them all a cut of the money. So he does, and they basically end up going to the Chinese place early because Chuck has a little problem. He has CMD, which is compulsive masturbation disorder. Definitely one of the most awkward moments for the series, and it is humorous. I mean, you don't like to make fun of these kind of things. It probably is definitely a serious, a disease that some people must have. I don't. It's not something that's made up. And I'm very, it definitely was humorous in many respects to see this. He walks over and he like introduces himself to Jackson Clay, and then he puts his hand down his pants. I mean, it definitely was like a nice way to have like a balance between the brutality that the show portrayed later on in the episode, and you kind of still have that funny moment, with Chuck, like those definitely funny moments throughout Chuck, that they showed throughout the episode. It was definitely a good balance. That's why it was a very good episode. Like even though like it's kind of like a one shot episode, even though later on in the series Chuck does come back, really nothing else that happens in that episode really has long term consequences. But it's still a great episode, and they do end up handing Chuck over to the Chinese in exchange for $60,000, which they do need in order to fund their, to buy the guns from the Irish. Basically, they weren't able to buy, so they had to cover the cost of the guns. So definitely was a very good episode. I really, really enjoyed it. Definitely had a lot going on, and I think it was a very good episode. It leads us into the next episode, AK-51, where basically, because of the fact that the club is so desperate for the money in order to keep the Irish pipeline going, Jackson Piney agreed to sell some AK guns to like a survivalist extreme group led by Nate Meineke and his son Russell, which Nate served with John Teller and Piney in Vietnam, so they have some connections, and they think they're just going to use them for some silly thing. But this episode reminds us of the terrible tragedies that can occur during by selling guns. You like to think of the Sons of Anarchy as being more helpful than anything, which in some ways they do help the town, but there are consequences for deciding to go down a life of crime. You sell drugs and people are going to overdose. You sell guns and they're going to be used to kill people. I mean, let's face it, they're going to be used to kill people. And it's not always going to be some other, gang member or some bad guy. It might be some kid. Or in this case, they used it to kill a sheriff's deputy and two people on a motorcycle accidentally get caught in the crossfire. But they used them in order to break one of their members out of a prison transport van, which definitely causes a lot of problems for the club. In this episode, we are also introduced to Agent June Stahl, who becomes one of the biggest antagonists for the characters. Basically, she has Clay arrested because the Teller Morrow phone number showed up in Nate Meineke's cell phone, which was left behind at the crime scene. And definitely was a very good episode in that it showed Jax having to step up and take the leadership role, which he does. He ends up being like basically the ATF is watching them, making sure that they're not going away. They're going to raid the warehouse. No, sorry, excuse me. They're going to raid their auto shop because they want to see if they have the guns there. So they're going to raid the shop. And what they end up doing is Jax is able to smuggle the guns out through the sewer, like basically the sewage truck, because there's sewer basically goes to put, it ends up backfiring on them because someone tried to flush panties. And it's definitely like a very, like, you see Jax is able to step up and he's able to take leadership. And that is something that is very, very important because you see that there is good potential in Jax. He's not just the VP because he's John Teller's son. He's VP because he can handle these kind of things. And this is very, very important for a character like Jax. What we also have in this episode is basically we see that the Sons of Anarchy have more connections. We saw in the first two episodes Trammell, who was a sheriff. Basically, he is in the Sons' pockets. He's kind of like the liaison between the Niners and the Sons. And basically, he wants revenge. He wants this to stop. He realizes that because of the fact that they sold the guns, a good friend of his was killed. And you see that Trammell again, like, he's only in it for the money, and he definitely still has feelings about this, and his law enforcement background still shines through. So you definitely have him in a very conflicting role, and it shows throughout the series. But he does, he's satisfied that basically they were able to deal with the problem, which Jax is able to deal with the problem. Because of the fact that, everybody's aware that, the Sons don't have a place to sell the guns, Meineke offers to buy the rest at a discount. So basically, Jax, Opie, and Piney get together to solve the problem, and they basically blow up the survival group members, killing them, so that way they can't harm anybody else. Plus, it basically prevents them from getting arrested and revealing what happened. So as a result, you have that problem dealt with. You see that Jax is able to lead. On the other part of this episode, you see that there's a lot of drama between Clay and Gemma in this episode. We find that Gemma is going through menopause at this time, and there are changes that come with that. And you see them at the beginning trying to make love, and it's not going very well. And Gemma understands like like the club culture. When they went to the Nevada, when they went to the Devil's Tribe patch over in Indian Hills, basically Clay slept with Cherry. Now only because he wanted to get back at Half-Sack, but nonetheless, cheating's cheating. And Gemma basically has accepted that, and she even says like, whatever happens on a run happens on a run. It stays on the run, though. It doesn't come back to Charming and bite me in the rear end. And Cherry shows up. Now, Clay freaks out because he thinks maybe she's there to cause more trouble, sleep with all the rest of the guys. But it turns out that she really has a connection with Half-Sack and just wants to get to know him. But, this leads to Gemma, again, feeling insecure about her age. And she basically physically assaults Cherry with a skateboard. And, the reason why I feel is because she just wants to make her feel, better about the situation. She wants to feel like she's still the alpha female, that she doesn't want, it's basically like a message to Cherry, like, hey, don't mess with my man. But again, it was like Gemma was feeling insecure at this time. It's hard for, an older woman like Gemma to basically keep Clay, under control. It's Clay being Clay. It's not as simple as, hey, he's a one-woman kind of man. He's not. And that's something that Gemma's accepted, but it stays out there. It's like that old saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, ba-bum, chink. It's the same thing when it comes to Indian Hills, what happened there. But basically, Clay and Gemma are able to resolve their problem. Gemma stays the night in jail, cools off, and when she realizes that Cherry is only there for Half-Sack, she basically is willing to look past that. So it's definitely a very good episode. They definitely do a great job of setting up things. And again, these episodes really do a good job of setting things up for the later episodes. Like, you find that, again, these small little details end up going into the next episode. And that's what Kurt Sutter really is all about. He really does a great job of, taking the small details and making them into something, more important later on. Which is why these episodes at the beginning are really important. I definitely like these episodes. Giving Back is probably one of my favorite episodes of the series Now, of course, I want to do some top 10 videos for episodes, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate them by the seasons 1 through 3 and seasons 4 through 6, because they kind of follow two different storylines. Like, you can kind of say that season 3 kind of ended a lot of the plots from the first 3 seasons, kind of, not all of them, but then 4 through 6 are kind of seen as the second chunk. So that's what I think I'm going to do, because I find that it's so hard for a series like Sons of Anarchy to pull out 10 episodes, just 10 episodes, because so many of them have very great, intricate plots, and Sutter does a very good job of making so many memorable scenes that it's so hard to choose. So that's why I'm probably going to do it that way. But I'm going to bring this video to a close. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you want to see more, please subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. I'm going to do more videos. I'm going to have we're going to do the rest of the season. I have a couple of videos coming up. There's been more information released on season 7, which I'm going to give to everybody who wants it. And I just want to thank everybody again. And I really hope you have a wonderful evening. And I thank you very much.